We have 6 punches, but we also have 6 ways of executing the punches. Whatever punch you choose, being that a jab, a cross, a front uppercut, back uppercut, front hook, back hook, to the head or to the body. We can execute them, punches, 6 different ways. Yes, you heard me right. It's not only one way. Listen carefully. It's very important. And according to each situation, you choose what way of executing you want, or how do you want to execute the punch. To start with, we have statical punching. Yeah, static. Only upper body movement happens, and even the upper body movement is quite limited. We start from a neutral position, right? You see that I'm starting from a neutral position, and to perform, for instance, a jab, I'm not giving up anything except the movement itself. You see that I barely do any other movement. When I'm throwing a cross, right, I am only rotating into the punch with the upper body, nothing else. Okay, no leg movement, nothing else. I give, so the static punch, the idea behind is I give up as less as possible. Of course, the punches themselves are not as powerful as possible, but they are as discreet, as fast as we can generate this or that particular punch. Okay, that is the reason why static punches are generated, is to be, sometimes you don't have much time to do anything else but just that movement. So these are the fastest punches, but not the most powerful punches. Okay, and what would you use the static for? Look, sometimes I have my opponent absolutely cornered. I don't need to step into the punch anymore. And remember, we don't step into the punch to create more power. We step into the punch to decrease distance. But if I'm already with my opponent into the corner, I don't need to decrease distance anymore. So in this case, if I need to throw a back-generated punch to finish the fight, being that a cross or a hook or an uppercut, I don't need to step into the punch anymore. All right? I just have to throw the punch. Good? If you need to lean into the punch a little bit to generate just that extra force, that's a different story. But in terms of executing the punch, technically, you don't step into the punch, you don't do anything else but doing minimum possible as fast as possible. Sometimes that is required in fights, and we do here on the back as well. And that's less driving as well. But you may have a question, look, but what if I need more power? For that, we have a solution, and we call it loading, punch loading. What that means is that even when I'm static, I'm throwing a jab, a hook, a front hook, or a jab, or an uppercut, or all the punches from the back, or back-generated punches. I need a little bit more power, right? My opponent is hurt, and I need to be able to throw it with that much more intention behind, with a little bit more heat behind. For that, we have loading. And what I mean with loading is, before I'm throwing, being that a front or a back punch, I'm loading up, I'm rotating. It's almost like a spring when you grab it and you compress it. So I'm doing the same. I'm loading, I'm compressing, and I will be able now to travel more. And by traveling more, I'll create more kinetic energy, and with that, more power. But there is a downside to that, is I'm giving up what I'm about to do. What is here, you were discreet, right? You are discrete and fast. When you load, you're not discrete and fast anymore, okay? So, punch loading, and no loading, static, okay? So it's good to know that even if I can't move, what I don't need to move, my opponent is in the corner, it doesn't go anywhere, so I don't have to decrease distance, but I need a little bit more power, then I can generate it from punch loading. So I'm loading, right? I'm loading the punch. This is what I mean with punch loading. Very good. Now, what if I need to decrease distance because my opponent is moving with me? So what do we call that? Punch stamping. All right, so we step into the punch. So every time I'm throwing the punch, I'm stepping into the punch. Okay? So it's punch stepping. And we do that with a jab, we do that with a cross, we do that with a front uppercut or front hook or front uppercut, back uppercut, front or back hook, apologies. You see that I'm not stepping with the back leg. No. I don't want you to step with the back leg. If you need to decrease distance to get closer, you step with the front leg, not with the back leg. If you are doing a long combination and your opponent is backing up actively, yes, then you will step with the back leg, but not when you do single punches or when you do a short combination. A short combination, you shouldn't step too much, especially when we are doing it on the back, all right? Because we are training on the back, we can't step too much. We have to also look into this reality. Our theoretical block will link with the practical block, and the reality is that on the back, I can't and I should not step too much. And so it is in the fight. If you have to step too much to punch, then maybe you should consider first decreasing the distance and then start punching. Because what can happen is, unless your opponent is very hurt, he or she will slide off the punches and will counterattack if you are widely off balance. Because if you need to step too much, or if you step and punch at the same time to decrease distance, then it becomes increasingly more possible for your opponent to capitalize on your movement. If you're doing huge movements at the time, you may find yourself with your opponent sideways and you are completely unprotected. So consider to decrease first distance, and then when the time comes, if you are in the right distance, then you strike. For that, you will not need to decrease too much, and that is why we do a step with the front leg for all the punches, back generated punches or front generated punches. I don't want you to step with your back leg when you generate punches, back punches, also because I don't want you to line up like this, right? Because as soon as you finish, you're all straight. Now, you are lowered. If you need to decrease distance, use your front leg for the back punches and the front punches. Okay, so punch stepping. What if you need to chase your opponent just that slightly to decrease a little bit of distance, and you want to generate extra power at the same time for whatever reason, maybe because your opponent is hurt, right? Or because you want to do some like a hard punch on the back. For that reason, we have a solution. Load, step punching. Load, step. Okay, so I'm loading and stepping. Load, step, load, step. It would look a little bit like this. So you load and step into the punch, okay? Because you decrease a little bit of the distance and you have generated a bit more power, a little bit more impact behind the punch. Very good. We have two ways of executing the punches left. And these two ones are very beautiful, and we integrated with a beautiful movement, with another beautiful movement. Bounce, all right? We bounce for the punches. Watch. If I'm just bouncing here, nothing really happens. But when I'm integrating bounce with movement and punching, and I call it bounce, step, punching, then a beautiful punch or a beautiful opportunity arises. Why? Because I'm decreasing the same distance faster, okay? Creating a little bit more momentum, a little bit more power behind the punch. A little bit, not that much, okay? Be aware, there is a danger behind. And the danger is because you can be counterattacked, and because when you're bouncing, right, you bounce from one leg to another, you are carrying your weight. So if you are going with your own weight and your own speed against an opponent's punch, that can amplify the impact of him, of her punch, okay? His or her punch. Very important to be aware, okay? So don't, if you do it here on the bag, it's not a problem. But if you're doing it in sparring, if you're doing it in a fight, be aware of that. You have to have good timing, because otherwise you can get caught while moving in with the bounce. Moving in is already quite dangerous, right? But if you're on top of that bounce, listen, when you move forwards, you can't really stop until you hit the floor and start going backwards. And if you happen to be caught right at the moment when you move before you hit the floor, imagine all that force you carry will go against the punch and will amplify your opponent's punch power. So it's beautiful, but it's important to be aware. Nonetheless, if you clean that part and you have good timing and know what you're doing, if you're here on the back, don't really worry about it. So now you can decrease distance with relative speed. With relative speed, and of course you can generate more power. It's beautiful. So that's the beauty of boxing. What you've seen a lot of fights is, of course, you see a lot of static movement, almost kind of static stepping, punching. Sometimes you see loading in the process, but you also have seen a lot of this bounce movement, which is beautiful, and movement, upper body movement, lower body movement. When the time comes and the opportunity presents itself and the little window opens, you strike, right? Sometimes when you go backwards, other times when you go in offensive or defensive striking movement, whatever the situation presents itself, you can always capitalize on that, all right? So you're going backwards, and boom, and at the right moment, you go with a with a bounce movement yourself to cut your opponent open or capitalize on your opponent opportunities, or capitalize on what your opponent opportunity will create, right? And usually that arises not just from movement but from striking. They will try to generate some kind of a striking, a jab or a cross, and you will look to use movement integrated with protection and punching in order to capitalize. And for that you need footwork and not only stepping into the punch. That is primarily what we do, but sometimes you can even use bounce. It's important to know that it exists, and train here. Train, first of all, start on the mirror. We will have that part in a moment, but also when we do the back workouts, to try and concentrate and do this movement and not just have one-sided boxing, but try to combine all kind of punch execution, static, load with stepping, bounce, what we're doing right now. And of course, the very last one, which is punch execution way number 6, which is pay very careful attention. And yes, it's right. We will combine bounce, load, step, and strike punch. Again, bounce, load, step, and punch at the same time. So I call it bounce, load, step punching. Bounce, load, step punching. It looks like this. You load. First of all, I want you to get this movement with just loading. Just bounce, load. And then you see you load. You can do that with a back shot. You load into the punch. So, bounce, load, step punching. Bounce, load, step punching. You load and punch. Bounce, load, step punching. It's beautiful because you carry a lot of power. You carry the power from loading, from stepping, bouncing, everything very fast. But at the same time, it's kind of slow. If you think about it, it's not a really fast movement. You do it as fast as you can, but it's so much more predictable for your opponent to capitalize on. It's no problem when you do it here on the back, not at all. When you do this in sparring, when you do this in fighting, then things become a little bit trickier. Nonetheless, we should, first of all, you should be aware of the possibility of such execution, punch execution, and train it and try to do it yourself. Start with, first of all, in front of the mirror. We will talk about next, and have a workout, a training possibility for you to start doing one by one this execution punching way, right? 6 ways of executing the punches. And of course, later I will encourage you to do it here on the back during the workout back training. And that was all. That was all. Quite long, but we had to take our time, talk about things the way they are. Remember, upper body is for generating the punches, lower body is to commit into the punch. The three rules, which are generating the punches from the cage grip, rotate into the punch, not lean into the punch, and keep yourself behind the knee line when executing the punches. See you in the next lesson, which is the training part.